Welcome to our session for Raising Eagles today. This session is brought to you by Community Services, where we really hope that everyone has the opportunity to connect, engage, and grow together. I'm going to fill you in on who is here today, and then we will jump right into upcoming events and then the session that we have today for you. I'm Ashley Croson, Director of Community Services. On this call, you'll also see Christy Alexander. She's our Family and Community Engagement Liaison. She'll be helping filter through some questions as you have them throughout and then at the end of the session. And then also Becky Wigington, she's our Director of Counseling. She really helps to inform current issues that are happening to make sure that we are putting some good sessions out there for you guys that are beneficial to parenting. We have a lot of upcoming Raising Eagles sessions. On September 4th, we're going to have a session on supporting diverse learning needs. This will be led by some district leaders. We have John Lipscomb, Kara Janaszak, and Carrie Lockhart. And they are, John is an LSSP, Kara is the dyslexia therapist coordinator, and then Carrie Lockhart is on the GT advanced academic side of things. And so if your child has a unique learning style and you want to support them in as many ways as possible, jump on that call. It'll be a great one. Screens and littles, starting smart with technology. If you've got some itty bitty babies, some 2 to 6 year olds who you're like, okay, they are totally into TV and to the iPad, and I just don't know how to create a balance there. Dr. Ryan Smith is going to support with that on September 9th at noon on Zoom. And then we're going to bring Dr. Caitlin Milstead back again on September 18th to talk about effective communication with your teen. So that'll be a great one as well. Please save the date for September 30th. We're going to host our first community engagement night of the school year. The theme this year is Lights, Camera, Action. And we're hoping that this is more than a learning night, but also a night for families to connect and grow and turn their new knowledge into action. That'll be on September 30th at the STEAM Center from 5:30 to 8 p.m. We are literally going to roll out the red carpet for you that night. We're going to have a Hollywood hot dog dinner. There'll be some free childcare and a conference style event with sessions that you can choose from that you feel are applicable to your current needs for your children. Also with different age groups for you to attend as well. Okay, and then I just want to remind you that we have the Raising Eagles liftoff tasks. For you to be able to access those, I'm going to show you really quick. You will go to our Raising Eagles website, and if you're wondering what are liftoff tasks, if you didn't attend our last session, this is an opportunity for you to reflect on the session that you just attended and to apply that knowledge in a new way. So for example, mindful parenting practices is today. If you go to our website and you scroll all the way down to parent caregiver liftoff tasks, you can click here to access the tasks. And so I am already logged in to Easy Generator. If you are a new user for Easy Generator, you will just create a username and password and you'll log in. And then it'll take you right to the session. Now, this session is being recorded. So once we get it edited and ready to go, we'll slide it into this module. You'll click on where it says Mindful Parenting Practices. We'll add the video coming soon, but you'll see that there are 2 application pieces. So which mindful parenting strategy shared in the session resonated most with you, and how might you begin incorporating it into your daily interactions with your teen? So after you've attended, kind of pausing and thinking about how you'll, make a change, and then choose one daily moment this week to practice active listening with your teen, and then you're going to get the opportunity to share how that went. So after you get all this great information from Dr. Caitlin Milstead today, you'll get to choose something that you can take and put into practice. And now, so excited to welcome, like I said, Dr. Caitlin Milstead. She's going to talk to us about mindful parenting practices, and she is a cool therapist that the teens love. So I'm excited for her to talk with you guys today. If you have questions, Caitlin, do you want them to put it in the chat for the end, or do you want to answer throughout?
Put it in the chat at the end. I'm going to really try and pace myself to leave a good amount of time for questions because I expect we'll probably have.
Okay, awesome. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll have you pull up the presentation, Ashley, because my iPad keeps kicking me out. And then if you just hit present on Canva, I believe it should let you do it presentation mode. But if that doesn't pop up, it's fine. Okay, yeah. Perfect. Okay, well, thank you for the introduction. I did tell Ashley earlier, I typically have been a cool therapist, but some of my teens say as I get older, I might be getting a little bit more lame, and that's okay. But yes, we're gonna talk about mindful parenting. And I want to go over some practical things that you can use, some concepts that you can think about. And Ashley had sent over some great questions that had been asked prior, and I tried to incorporate as much, as many answers as I could into the presentation. But if I missed something, didn't get to yours specifically, my email will be at the end, and you can email me your questions directly, or if you just don't feel comfortable putting them in the chat, we can do it that way too. Okay. Okay. All right. If we want to swipe over, say, sorry, give you a big task. Okay. So in this cover slide, I kind of just wanted to cover the gist, right? If you just take away what is on this slide, that is something. Okay. So why parent mindfully? Mindful parenting is going to emphasize empathy, fostering a deeper connection with your teenager, emotional regulation, active listening, and self-compassion. We're going to talk about all of that today, but just kind of some bullet points for you to have in your back pocket. If we are able to really recognize our own emotions and regulate ourselves well, not only is this going to allow our teenager to feel safer to come talk to us, right? Because we're being calm, we're being safe, but they're going to learn from you as well, right? And we'll talk about that as well. But when we show our teenagers how to emotionally regulate, or our littles, if you have littles, they're going to pick up on what we do. And then active listening is crucial. Teenagers, they're going to act like they don't want you to talk to them. They do want you to talk to them. Sometimes they don't. They want to really pick and choose, kind of like a cat, right? When do I want my parents to lean in? When do I want to be left alone? And it's really hard to dissect. What should I do? Should I go left? Should I go right? But typically, teenagers really do want to connect with their parents. They just don't always know how to express it. And so when they do make an attempt to connect, pay attention, acknowledge their feelings. Sorry, I had to take the camera off my angle. We're going to talk about why we shouldn't be reactive, and then just validate. And then we want to be compassionate towards ourselves and towards our teenagers. There's just a lot of normalization of self-shame, right? Where there can be a lot of perceived shame by our teenagers sometimes in our tone or in our responses. And so we really want to model self-compassion for them, because the world is hard enough. We don't need to be extra hard on ourselves. But we will also talk a little bit about that doesn't mean always give ourselves the easy way out or never have stress. It's just, how do we challenge ourselves kindly? And then, yeah, kind of what I said earlier, this is going to help you and it's going to help your teenager. So next one. So a little bit about mindfulness, and we're just going to do small summarizations. Mindfulness is the practice of paying attention in the present moment without judgment, right? So it's really just, I'm in the here, I'm in the now. Right now, I'm in this meeting with you guys giving this presentation. I'm not thinking about my grocery list. I'm not thinking about what I need to do tonight, at bedtime. I'm thinking about what we're talking about. My mind might want to think, oh, don't forget to get cheese. But mindfulness is really training our brain to stay focused. Okay. And so did this little mindfulness umbrella, because mindfulness is not just meditation. It's a more encompassing concept, right? So some people might think of mindfulness and think, oh, I meditate. But really it can be whatever works for you, right? So it could be waking up and having a cup of coffee in the morning and journaling, or if you're spiritual, reading something spiritual, or just sitting on the porch while the weather's nice and having 20 minutes to yourself. It could look like going on a walk where we don't, necessarily listen to a podcast, or we're not, watching TikTok on our phones, and we're just enjoying the nature, enjoying the sun, moving our bodies. Mindfulness can also be, oh, I'm really bad about this. We'll watch a movie at home, and then I will also play Sudoku on my phone while I'm watching a movie. It's horrible. But so mindfulness could even be just enjoying a movie without distraction, right? It's really, really just being present, and no one's great at it. unless we practice, because it's hard. We live in a really overstimulating world, and it's just getting more and more stimulating. And so sometimes we can feel like our brains are 10 different places at once. And we're going to talk about what that does in the brain a little bit. But when you practice mindfulness regularly, it helps us ease psychological stress. We feel a little bit more paced in our thoughts and in our bodies. It increases positive emotion. It increases social connection, emotional intelligence, and it improves your ability to regulate your emotions. And so we are not mindful all day and we're not mindful all the time, but developing the skill to learn how to train your brain to check in is really beneficial. And it's going to be beneficial when we work with our teenagers. So we can go to the next one. So what's happening in your brain? Okay, we're not going to do a whole brain lesson because you'd pick a different presenter for that. But what we are going to talk about is a little bit about what happens when we get overstimulated and stressed. And kids are overstimulating and stressful, and so is life. So the amygdala is your fire alarm, right? That's just like a 1-inch little part of your brain, and it's so strong. And so and everyone's is a little different, but this is the part of your brain that tells you danger, right? And you might have seen this online or people joke about it, like my brain needs to learn I'm not a caveman and a tiger's chasing me. But kind of. Really, that's not wrong. That's what that part of your brain is supposed to tell you. Your prefrontal cortex is your smart part, right? So this is the part of your brain that's supposed to help you make logical decisions. It's supposed to help you control your impulses, solve your problems. Our amygdala responds first. And so I tell what clients when I work with them, I say, we have our first thought and our second thought. We do not want to chase our first thought. Now, our second thought can really determine the decisions that we make. But if we chase our first thought, a lot of times we might be reacting and not responding. And you might notice that with your kids a lot, that am I reacting to them or am I responding to them? And so when we are overstimulated and stressed and kind of living in this world of, panic, we'll say, anxiety, it really makes it difficult for our body to get back to baseline and check in logically with itself to ask ourselves, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I experiencing? Okay, so when we practice mindfulness, we're allowing our amygdala to calm down and we're checking in with our prefrontal cortex a little bit better. And so losing access to your prefrontal cortex can lead to difficulty thinking clearly, responding thoughtfully, focusing, and being attentive to others. Right? This might be why getting out the door and getting to school on time, your amygdala might feel like it's driving that whole interaction every morning if you've got kiddos with time blindness or there's traffic or whatever. But when you practice mindfulness consistently, what you see is that you're going to see a decreased connection from the amygdala, and the prefrontal cortex is going to become thicker. And so we're truly creating the neural pathways for our brain to strengthen this muscle and to say, my prefrontal cortex kicks in faster. It thinks more clearly. My amygdala is not in control, but that's not just going to happen overnight. And parents ask me a lot, I'm frustrated with how I'm reacting. I don't like how I talk to my kid in this interaction. I wish I'd done it differently. And I feel for my parents because I think there's this pressure to feel this should happen for me naturally. I should naturally be the parent that responds calmly and empathetically, but we're not. And that's okay. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Most of us first feel reactive when we feel challenged or we've got a kiddo that's being defiant or ignoring us or whatever. No one really kind of naturally has their prefrontal cortex just check in first when these emotions are coming up. So we practice checking ourselves and saying, how do I want to respond better? And that's not just going to happen overnight. And that's okay. And we'll talk about that. But now we can move to the next one. Okay, so before we talk about how to do that, I do like to say monkey see, monkey do. Your kids learn from you first. So I want everyone, not right now, but today, do a self-assessment, right? What is your stress baseline? Everyone's is a little bit different. And so the way I explain it is, and in some of the book recommendations, you'll see it similarly. Some of us, we kind of have a pretty baseline regulation and we kind of spike up, right? We're late for work, we spike up, we come back down. We have a presentation, we spike up, we come back down, whatever it might be. But sometimes you have those days where we have a baseline and when we spike up, before we can come back down, something else spikes us back up and something else spikes us back up. And so really asking yourself, am I coming back to baseline and I'm feeling content and calm? Or am I kind of regularly functioning in this level of stress, right? Because that's going to be really indicative of, do I need to be doing something different? How do I need to be taking care of myself? And then how are you regulating when you're stressed? How are we taking care of ourselves? Are we practicing self-care? And when I say self-care, I don't mean like go and get your nails done. That is totally great. But I'm really talking about true, deep reflection, right? Of self-care. And if I'm not taking care of myself, is that part of the problem? Okay. I tell parents this a lot. Your teen brain is underdeveloped. Their prefrontal cortex is not fully formed. So they cannot think as calmly, as clearly, as focused as you can. They just can't do it. But what I see a lot in family dynamics is parents will get reactive and expect their teen to sit quietly and just kind of listen, right? No talking back, no walking away. Don't argue with me. And it kind of comes off, I think, from the parent side, a lot of, well, this is how you show respect. I'm the parent, which I'm not negating. But we cannot expect our teenager to respond more emotionally regulated than we respond. And so what we need to do is we need to set the expectation. When I'm upset, when I'm stressed, when I'm frustrated, this is how I'm going to handle it. And this is how I want you to handle it. But I don't expect you to handle it better than I, the adult, handle it. So it's really stressful, right? When we're upset with our kiddos, or we're trying to have a really serious conversation with them, and we feel like they're not taking it as seriously as we'd like, it gets really stressful, right? We feel our amygdala starts firing and it starts saying we feel threatened or this is disrespectful, and we get more dysregulated. And we'll talk about what to do in those moments, but always, always remember their brains are not developed. So it's not always them just being defiant. Sometimes this is what their brains are doing. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Mindful parenting will help you and it will help them. And then remember for yourself and remember for your teenager, all feelings are acceptable. We can be helpers and coaches modeling how to care for strong emotions. And so your kid is allowed to have strong emotions. A lot of parents get concerned. They're feeling really big things. Of course, they're feeling big things. They're going through puberty. We barely have time to touch on it. Maybe this will be a presentation in another day of social media and your teen and the pressures that come with that, that we just can't fully understand because we didn't all grow up with the same level of technology. We see it now, but we weren't raised as a teenager with it. And so they have big emotions, and that's okay. We just want to help them learn how to manage and get through their day more efficiently, without trying to never have those emotions, right? We want them to allow them to come, but we'll talk about it. Okay. We can go to the next. Yeah. Okay. So some things for you to practice for yourself, right? When we notice the amygdala starting to fire and we start to feel it in our body, one thing you can ask yourself after this presentation, what are my triggers and what are my reactions to those triggers, right? And so do you feel more dysregulated when you've asked your teenager to do something 10 times and they still haven't done it? And then when we get to that point, how are we reacting, right? This isn't a pass or fail exam. I just want you to learn yourself a little bit better. What am I doing and what bothers me? Because different things bother different parents, and that's okay. So really try to ask yourself, what are my triggers? What are my reactions? There are, in some of the books I'll recommend, tons of practical practices that you can take away from this. And I couldn't list all of them or you'd be so overwhelmed. And one of the books that I'll recommend in the end has different practices for different age groups. So if you have kids of different age group, they make them developmentally appropriate. But some things that I wanted to highlight is one is RAIN, right? It's an acronym. So when you're feeling frustrated, you're noticing your heart's beating faster, you're noticing that, maybe you're getting hot, maybe you're getting angry, whatever it is for you, recognize what's happening. Just ask yourself, what is going on? And then allow yourself to feel it for a second. Don't shame yourself and say, well, I'm not, as a parent, I'm not supposed to feel these things. You're allowed to feel them. And so just be kind with yourself as you try to understand what's coming up for you. If I ask Ashley, can you put your socks in the hamper? And she says, sure, Caitlin, sure, no problem. And then the next day they're on the floor. Ashley, can you put your socks in the hamper? Sure, Caitlin, no problem. Next day they're on the floor. Well, by the fourth or fifth day, I'm going to blow up. But I don't really care that the socks are on the floor. I care that I keep making a really direct request and Ashley doesn't seem to care, right? So if I really dig into that emotion, why am I so upset with Ashley? The socks aren't that big of a deal. But the level of my needs don't feel important to you does feel like a big deal. Okay. And then nurture with non-identification. And what that means is as you feel things and as things come up, they do not have to define what you do as a parent. Okay. You're allowed to have them. And that doesn't mean I'm a mean parent, I'm a bad parent, I shouldn't feel these things. You're allowed to feel things. We just want to make sure we're not reacting based on that feeling. Okay. So step away. This is the biggest thing. I tell couples to do this, families to do this. We'll say, sometimes maybe your teen wants to walk away when y'all are in a tough conversation. And we say, don't walk away from me. I'm not done yet. But really, when you notice that the conversation is getting more emotionally dysregulated than it is effective, everyone can go take a break. But don't take 10 hours, take 20 minutes, right? Say, hey, we're not really getting anywhere with this conversation, or I don't feel regulated enough to have it with you, which you can say to your kid. So I'm going to go take 20 minutes and I'll come back and we'll try again. Because what's that communicating to you and to your teen is we are allowed to take breaks to calm down for the sake of our relationship and this conversation. But I'm not emotionally abandoning you in this moment. I'm not walking away from you because I'm tired of it or I can't handle it. I'm walking away so I can take a break and check in, but I'm going to come back and find you in 20 minutes. You know where I'll be and when I'll be back. Okay. And this can go for both ways. If you notice your teenager is getting frustrated or having a hard time, you can ask them, do you want a break from this conversation? We're going to finish it, but you can take a break and they'll probably appreciate it and come back a little bit more regulated. Okay. Get grounded in your body. And so one thing that I think is a really simple and easy way to do that is like a body scan. You can find them on YouTube. You can find apps with them. You can do an hour-long one. You can do a 5-minute one. It just helps you mindfully connect with your body and kind of get out of your head and back in with your nervous system to regulate a bit. And maybe noticing in your body when you do get dysregulated, where you're starting to feel it, what's coming up. Is my blood pressure rising? Am I getting hot? Am I getting nauseous? It allows us to check in with those bodies. Your body will respond before your brain almost every time, right? Like if you're driving and you see brake lights really fast, your body probably responds before your brain really processes what to do. And so give yourself a minute to just check in with your body and see what's happening. See if we can calm it down a little. Unhook from your negative thoughts. So we'll talk a little bit about self-compassion, but I think when we have negative thoughts about ourselves specifically, it can really drive our behavior, right? So, I'm just the mom that always yells, like, this is who I am. Well, then we actually just might feed into that narrative more versus really saying, I'm not the mom that always yells, but I do notice when this happens, I feel like I have to yell to get my teenager's attention, right? And so that's not character defining, but I can recognize the behavior I'm not happy with. And when we're able to pay attention more to our behavior than define ourselves by it, we end up being nicer to ourselves as parents. Okay. And our kids will see this too. Our kids will be able to say, okay, did I fail that math test? So does that mean I failed a math test or am I a failure? Right. They're very different connotations to those statements. And so letting our kids also know not every mistake we make just defines who we are in this terrible way. So they'll learn and they'll see it. And then decrease your stress overall. I wish we could talk so much about teen stress and family stress, and we are all so overscheduled with activities, and probably the more kids you have, the more activities you're going to. And so it leaves very little time for parents and teenagers. Man, if you've got a kiddo in band, this is your season. I say this is your whole season is your Super Bowl between competitions and football seasons and band camp and morning practice and afternoon. It's busy. So how are we doing stress as a family, right? Are we overscheduled, overbooked? Am I getting sleep? Am I getting exercise if that's your thing? And are we just getting time as a family? And if you're saying no to a lot of those, then I think that's where you need to start for the rest of it to take effect. So some things, there's so much more, but we can move on to the next slide. Okay. Active listening. I am doing that presentation in September, so we will go really deep into active listening and how to do that with your teenager. But I wanted to list some of the skills here so y'all can go back to it. We probably don't have a lot of time to go over all of it, but some of the basics. Teenagers want to feel heard and trusted, right? Teenagers are experts in their lives, so they like to think. They know everything, you know nothing, they've got it figured out. But so when we tell them they don't know. They don't like that. They feel dismissed or not trusted. You don't trust their agency. They really, really want agency over their lives. And so active listening allows you to understand your teen a little bit better. Oh, in the heading, I ask every parent this. Do you know your teen or do you just know what they do? And the context of that question is teens do not always share emotionally what's going on for them. I recognize that. It's a really hard barrier for parent and children. But so the default that I think that leaves parents to talk to their kids about is, what'd you do today? What do you have tomorrow? Do you have homework? What are you going to do this weekend? And so then we just know a lot about what our kid does. But do we really know them as people, right? Do we know what their peer dynamics look like? Are they being bullied? Are they struggling, with wanting to date? What are the thoughts on that? Those things. And teens don't open up freely, and I understand that. So we do our best to kind of keep the door open for them, and they'll choose when they want to walk through it. And so, but your kids do want to talk to you. They do. Ask your kids when they do try to make a connection with you, when they come up to you, what do you need from me in this conversation? I think a big deterrent for teens is I don't want this conversation to turn into a lecture. If like my parents think I should do this a different way, I should handle this a different way. So then they kind of are just being told what to do. But a lot of times they just want you to listen and they want to kind of brainstorm. I had a teenager the other day that was having a conversation with a friend, and she was like, how do you think I should respond? And I said, well, here's what I would say. And she said, I don't like that. I'm going to do something different. Okay, that's fine. She doesn't have to take my suggestion, but they know what they like. They want to figure themselves out. So sometimes they just want us to listen. And if they're not harming themselves or another person, we can kind of give them that space. But sometimes they do want your advice, and giving them the agency to ask for it will go a long way. They'll probably listen to it more than if you just told them outright. iMessages help a lot. So when your kid is frustrating you, right? When you're feeling reactive to what is going on around the house, telling them, I'm feeling annoyed that I can't, finish my statement to your dad because you keep interrupting me, or because I keep getting interrupted, right? There's a whole process, and I didn't have time to go through the whole iMessage, but using iMessages versus you're being annoying, you're getting on my nerves. Their brains are naturally going to get more defensive when you say you. So it's okay to let your kid know they're being annoying. Just use an iMessage. I'm getting frustrated because you keep interrupting me. It's good for them to learn that you are human and not just a chauffeur to football practice. And you also have emotions. It helps them develop empathy. It helps them, work collaboratively. They're going to learn all of this in the family unit first. Oh, and then I put this. Okay, yes, kids don't want lectures. Sometimes they just want you to want their parents. So connect before you correct. Okay. Okay, go to the next one. So self-compassion, I want you guys to practice this for yourselves first, and then hopefully teach your kids along the way. The self-compassion has three components. It has self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. The real gist of this is when we function in a way that maybe we're less than happy with, we allow ourselves to, one, not shame ourselves or be super hypercritical. Okay. We want to be able to say, like, yeah, I didn't love that that happened, but I'm not the worst parent. I'm not the worst person. We're all human. That's common humanity. We're all human. We're not perfect, and no one expects us to be perfect, especially our kids. Kids really don't mind if you screw up. As long as you can own that you screwed up, they're really resilient and they don't expect you to be a perfect parent. And then just practice mindfulness. I reacted this way. What was coming up for me? What's going on with me at work that maybe I'm really stressed and it's bleeding into the home life, right? Or do I have a parent that's sick and I feel really stretched thin between the kids and work and taking care of my elderly parents? Like, what else could be going on that's not just my teenager keeps leaving their backpack in the hallway, whatever it might be. So there's a really great book by Kristen Neff on self-compassion if you ever want it. Okay, teenagers want routine. They want routine. They want connection. Everyone thinks like, oh, summer's here. My kids they're having the best time of their life. I feel like my teenagers I work with love when school starts because probably after the third week of summer, they're like, I'm so bored. What's my purpose? What am I doing? So they like routine and they like routine at home. And so when I ask my question to parents in therapy, do you know your teen or do you know just know what they do? And a lot of the responses might be, I just kind of know what they do. I say, okay, well, let's build in connection because yeah, your teenager might not always want to hang out with their parents, and that's a good thing. When our teens gravitate more towards their peers, this is very like, appropriate socially, developmentally, but they still need their parents and they need the adults in their life. And so finding routine that works for your family. So these are just some ideas. You could do a family dinner once a week, right? Where we all sit together, we have dinner, we connect. You could do it multiple times. Or reserve one night a week for family activity night and maybe rotate who picks the activity. So like I've got one teen that knows Sunday night is family night. She makes no plans on Sunday night with friends. Like they usually do grill out and have dinner and, everybody comes together. But you could do an activity. Just know like this is family night. Like mom doesn't schedule stuff on family night. Dad doesn't schedule stuff. Kids don't. Create a morning and night routine that's really predictable. Okay. Now I know sometimes schedules change. We have A days, we have B days, but even if it's just as much as you come downstairs and you have breakfast before you leave, right? Or at night, we all check in with each other for like 10 minutes while we're getting ready for bed and just like have a moment. If we didn't have time to have dinner together that night, we still connect at the end of the day. Ensure that each child gets one-on-one time with each parent. And so I think this is really important that your kids get to have their own relationship with you and their other parent or the other adults in their life that are important. It allows for more one-on-one connection, and teens might share one thing with one parent that they don't want to share with another parent. Privacy and agency are huge aspects for teenagers. And sometimes they feel more comfortable with certain people to share certain things. So one-on-one time, practice gratitude and kindness as a family. And so this might look like at dinner or at your nighttime routine, what's something I'm grateful for today, or what's something I'm grateful for from someone in this family, right? Like I'm really appreciative my sister loaded the dishwasher for me because I wasn't going to get to my chores today. Or I'm really appreciative that everyone was ready to get out the door on time today. And we had a really fun conversation on the way to school, right? Whatever that means. Kindness is also important. And we're going to talk a little bit about technology, but like I said, we don't have time to get into all of it. But our reliance on technology is just completely diminishing our empathy just as a society, but really in teenagers, we've probably all developed empathy pre-technology, pre-cell phones. Our teens aren't really getting that. So losing face-to-face connection and putting so much online and so much socialization online is really decreasing that part of the brain. So teaching your kids, maybe we're going to do a random act of kindness, right? Maybe we are going to, let's make dinner for our neighbor who just had surgery, or let's go volunteer at Allen Community Outreach, or I think they might have changed the name, but let's go do something together. It doesn't have to be every week, but maybe like once a month, or let the kids come up with their idea, right? Allow your kids to see you prioritize yourself and your partners. Okay. So this is not just about the teens. Really, this presentation is for the parents, but let your kids know, no, Wednesday night, mom has her, time with her friends, right? Or she's got her own therapy session or whatever, right? Like mom takes care of mom today, so I can't do things for you, and that's okay. Or dad has his own thing, or mom and dad are going to go do their own thing. And our relationship is also really important. And so I can't, take you to Lauren's house, whatever. It's important for them to see that it's not a selfish act to take care of yourself. And so I think that's really important. And then, ensure everyone has a role in the household. Chores are really important. Not even just here's your allowance because you did your chores. To create that community aspect of contribution, every kiddo should have, that's of appropriate age, should have a chore. Okay. We all contribute to the household because we all live there. And so I know like my mom always had Saturday morning we wake up and like she would rip those blinds open and the pine sol was everywhere and we were all cleaning and we hated it, but we did it and it was routine. And so we knew it was coming. And so it's good. We want to help. We want our kids to help us. Okay. Hang up and hang out. We're going to reference monkey see, monkey do here. One thing I want you to ask yourself after this presentation: what does my relationship with my phone look like? And Ashley knows this. I just had a baby, 7 months old. I should have just put a bunch of pictures of him in here. You would have loved it. But I really had to question how much I was on my phone once this baby came, because even at 7 months old, if my phone is out, like on the counter and he's there, he wants it. So if I'm on it around him, he wants it because he's like, what are you looking at? And so I really had to get a lot of apps off my phone to be more present. So what you do with your phone is what your kid is going to normalize. If you're texting at a red light, if you're always on the phone with your friends while you're driving, I do it all the time. This is how they're going to function, right? If the first thing I'm doing in the morning is I'm making breakfast and I'm checking my email or I'm texting, your kids are going to wake up and say, okay, now I get on my phone. And so really asking yourself, what's my relationship like with my phone? And what are my kids seeing? And then how do I want to instill the values in them, right? So like I said, we're losing our FaceTime. So we're losing our empathy. We're losing our connection. We can blame some of this on COVID, but I really think regardless, technology would have put us here anyway. And kids are always communicating over Snapchat. I think TikTok, some they'll talk, Discord. I mean, we're losing our face-to-face play, where you'd kind of be a latchkey kid and you'd run around the neighborhood with your friends. We're not really doing that as much. Some things you can consider is investing in like a family phone or a landline until they hit high school. Now, I know most parents in here probably have high schoolers, but having more of a family phone versus their personal phone, so we don't create so much ownership over the phone. It's like, well, it's a shared phone, right? So you can use it to go over to Billy's house to play so I can get a hold of you, but it stays in the kitchen when you're not using it, maybe creating routine around like, I know kids aren't allowed to have their phones at school anymore, and that's been a big topic in my office as of late. So I get wanting them to have an opportunity to check in with their friends before school, but maybe we at least say, let's get, through getting ready this morning and then I'll let you check your phone. Or when we're on the car ride to school, let's stay off of our phones so that we can talk, or maybe it's on the car ride home from school. Let's stay off our phones so we can check in with each other. When we're doing family time, everybody put their phone away, not just the kids, right? Dinners, movie nights, whatever. We're all just going to put our phones up. We can check work emails later. We can call people back if we need to. I think I tell teenagers they're really good about this, actually. They get so many notifications that I think they can almost ignore them. I can't. I'm terrible at it. If my phone goes off, I look at it. And so I think we can all learn a little bit better about just because we have a ping doesn't mean there's this huge urgency that I must respond. Kind of like Pavlov's dog, right? We've conditioned ourselves. And that set boundaries. Teenagers hate it. I know it. They hate when I suggest it to families. They don't love it, but truly their sleep is so important. They do not need to have their phones in their rooms. They can get an alarm clock. They need to be going to bed. They need to be getting enough sleep. They need to recognize that if they want to see their friends, that they can go and invite them to something, go see them, invite them over, that we don't always need to just play video games and connect or text on Snapchat, which sometimes they just send pictures of their face. I don't know. I learn a lot. And so we really want to encourage face-to-face play. We really want to encourage that the phone is just a part of our day, but it is not a staple of our day, right? And they're going to see that with how we respond to our phones as well. Okay. Boundaries, rules, expectations. There are 3 types of boundaries. I'm going to speed roll this so we can answer questions. Chaotic, rigid, flexible. Chaotic is there are no boundaries, or I set a boundary and I never follow through with it when you cross it, right? And so we want to ensure that we're not having chaotic boundaries where we say, you better clean your room or you can't go, to Amy's house tonight, but they don't clean their room and we still let them go to Amy's house. Rigid boundaries are where there's just no negotiation. And we do want to bring our kids' opinion to the table sometimes. So we want to have flexible boundaries, right? So maybe usually their curfew is 10, but they got all their homework done and their room is clean and their grades are good and they really want to go see this movie and it goes until midnight. Can I please, 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 please go? Okay, sure. I can be flexible on that boundary, right? So we want to know that our kids can earn some freedom and some trust, but they need to be able to predict the boundary is still the boundary, right? So if I say no, the answer is just no, not negotiation. Consequences should be appropriate, predictable, and consistent. Consistent. I'm telling you, you give your teenager an inch, they will take a mile. If you say, okay, I know you didn't clean your room, but go to Amy's. Well, in a week when they don't clean the room and they want to go to Jenna's, and you're like, no, you need to clean your room. They're going to say, but I didn't have to go last weekend when I got to go to Amy's. They'll remember. And so they do better with consistency and predictability to know if I don't wake up on time for school, I know that I'm grounded from my phone today. I just know. I don't even need mom to tell me because I know how consistent that rule is. So if I want my phone today, I'm going to go to school on time. Ensure that expectations are clearly stated, right? And provide a timeline. So one thing I see come up in families a lot is your kiddo's playing a game or they're doing homework or they're on their phone and you say, hey, I need you to take out the trash. And they say, okay, I'll do it later. And they're like, no, I said I need you to take out the trash. I need you to do it right now. Well, teenagers will get really frustrated by that because they're doing something, right? And it's kind of seen as combative or defiant. But really what's happening is their brains just really don't switch as fast as our brains do, task to task. They kind of get this tunnel vision. They're not as good at multitasking in that sense. They're good in other ways. And so I always say, give them a timeline. I need you to take the trash out before you go to bed tonight, right? Or like before we start cooking dinner, because we're going to need it out. If you give them a timeline, they'll most likely get it done. They'll just kind of do it more on their terms. And that little bit of agency still gets your goal met, but with less, conflict. And I tell parents a lot, your need is not their need. So just because you find something to be important doesn't mean that they're going to find it important. And that's okay. It still probably needs to get done, but they don't have to love that you're asking them to do certain things because they probably find what their needs are to be more important. And we'll talk about that in a second. And then when you feel uncomfortable with your child's behavior, check your judgmental mind. And what I mean by that, right, is if they're being defiant or challenging you or not listening to you or just kind of ignoring you, and your brain and your amygdala starts firing, right? Our little fire alarm is going off, and our brain wants to be like, they're so disrespectful. They never listen to me. We want to check that, because if we slip and say that, they will never forget it. They will never forget when you call them disrespectful or disappointing or frustrating, or they won't forget. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't acknowledge that the impact they have on other people, but we really want to make sure we're communicating in a way that's not character defining and not judgmental. Okay. And so really asking ourselves, why is this behavior so frustrating to me? And then how do I communicate to them how it's making me feel without the shame? Because they're really sensitive. They're tough, but they're sensitive. Okay. So we want to try as much as possible to find win-win problem solving with our teenagers, right? So identify needs, not solutions. When we are looking at, we'll use the trash, for example, right? Or I need you to clean your room. Well, I have a really big AP history test and I need to study. Okay, so they need to study and I need their room clean because my mother-in-law is coming over and I cannot let her see how messy our house is. So what do we do? So then we're going to brainstorm, well, what can we do to solve this problem together? Because like I said, kids really do appreciate when their opinions are brought into the conversation and their ideas are heard. It builds a lot of confidence. So they might say, well, let me study now and I'll clean my room later before grandma gets over. Does this solution does it meet both of our needs? Yes. Okay. Make decisions on who's going to do what and by when. I am going to clean my room by 5. Okay, cool. And then make sure that we're all happy with it. It's actually like a pretty streamlined process, right? This obviously breaks it down to multi-steps, but just really communicating with your teenager. What it does is it helps them consider other people's needs, because the teenage brain is pretty self-centered, and that's not an insult to them. It just is. And so it's okay for them to say, hey, I've got to like problem solve this while I get my needs met and my parents. Okay. And so really practicing with them, I promise you they'll be far more collaborative and compliant if their opinions are considered. Okay, next one. I think I just have one more. Friendly reminders. Unschedule your teen. Rest and play are super productive. They help our brains be creative. They help us connect in our social support without stress. And so if you notice you've got a teen that is just really anxious, really overwhelmed, they're doing AP classes, they're doing extracurriculars, maybe ask them, could we scale back somewhere? And a lot of times when I ask teenagers this, they say, no, I have to do all of these things. They're under an immense amount of pressure with college applications, and there's a big competitiveness with that phase of life. And so as they see you take time for yourself, maybe encouraging them to take time for themselves to take a break somewhere. Ask for feedback. It really helps our kids to understand feedback does not have to be criticism, right? And this is really hard. This is hard for me. This is hard for a lot of people to say, how am I doing, right? How am I doing as a parent? When I was making this presentation, I asked my 7-month-old, you got any feedback for me? But he's pretty content. Ask him, did I do anything that frustrated you this week? And they may or may not answer, but it allows them to have a voice in it. And it's not an insult to you, right? We're just learning about each other. And then growth mindset over fixed mindset. Growth mindset is effort, right? So like you worked really hard. I saw you study so hard for that test. I know you've been practicing your solo every day after school. I'm so proud of you for the effort you're putting in. Versus on the outcome, because outcome is really pass fail, right? Like we didn't get picked for student council president. We really studied for that bio test and still got a C, right? So if we're only focused on the outcome, then it shows our efforts aren't as important if we don't get to our goal. And so we really want to hone in on our kids' efforts, and your own are really important. Okay. And then I think there's just some book recommendations for you. There are so many more, but these are some of the ones I used for the presentation, and some I just use in therapy a lot. if you're interested. And some I'll use for the presentation next month too. So.
Which
And
one
then,
do you say that is for like the multiple age groups?
Raising Good Humans is the one with, it's got tips and tricks for each age group. Wait, let me double check. No, it's mindful parenting. Mindful parenting is the one. I had to remember.
Okay.
That has activities or suggestion or practical like practices, mindfulness ones, as well as kind of recommendations based on each concept, developmentally appropriate for each age group. So I'm trying to find how she breaks it up in this book. Kristen. I think it's like 0 to 5, and then I think it's more like maybe 5 to 12. Yeah, elementary age, tweens and teens, 10 to 18. And then she has some that are focused on like little kids, littles.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a great book. I mean, they were phenomenal. I even learned a lot putting this together to just make sure I was really honing in on some of the more formal clinical stuff. They're really cool.
Perfect.
Okay. And then hopefully it gives us enough time.
Questions.
I see a couple. Is it okay if I?
There is one that I think I deleted on accident, but it was in regards to monkey see, monkey do. And they're asking, how do we know when we're reacting versus responding?
Okay. Yes. Okay. This is a really good question, because think of reaction as I am reacting. I'm reacting because I'm feeling triggered, right? Or activated by something that's going on. So the example I always use is if I'm driving in the car and someone cuts me off, and the first thing I want to do is like yell at them for cutting me off. Okay, I'm reacting because I feel threatened or just angry, right? And I want them to know. But if I were to actually respond, I might not actually do anything, right? Or just say, wow, that was really scary and that really upset me. And that would be more of a response. Another example I give pertinent to parents is if your kid comes to you and let's say, this is a heavy topic, but let's say they're self-harming, right? Hey, mom, I've been really stressed and I've noticed, or hey, dad, that this is how I've been managing it is through self-harming. And if our first reaction is, oh my gosh, this is terrible. You shouldn't do that. Don't do that. Why would you hurt yourself? Why would you think to do that? Have I done something wrong? What do you need? Reactive. Your kid will shut down. They will not tell you anything else. Okay. It has been more about your emotions than theirs. So as scary as it is to hear that our kid might be struggling with self-harm, we want to make sure we're checking our emotion, and then we're actively listening and asking questions that are helpful of, okay, how can I be helpful to you? Would you like to go to therapy? Is there something your adults in your life can do to help you? Right? Do you want a safe place to talk about what's bothering you? And functioning. So does that kind of clear that up? Maybe a little of, am I reacting or am I responding? Okay. I see this one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Christy. You tell me.
They're in the question and answers and in the chat. So in the chat, it says, you say teen brains are not fully formed and they cannot think calmly and clearly. However, I've seen my daughter respond positively to my husband and negatively to me over the same subject.
Yes. Teenagers will do this, right? Sometimes they might be upset with a parent, one parent, they might be triggered by them, we'll say, for different reasons or another. I would have to kind of really understand the family more to understand why that is. But teens do respond to different people differently. And so, yes, when I say their brains aren't fully developed, it really means they're not thinking clearly. They're thinking, should I drive fast because that sounds fun? Or no, that's really dangerous and I shouldn't do it. Well, your teenager might drive fast because it's really fun, right? So they're going to feel their emotions faster. They're going to have a bigger difficulty regulating and processing in the moment. And so if you're noticing, why is my kid communicating with me differently than their other parent? Really asking for that feedback. I noticed that you respond differently to me than to dad. Why? Right? Why are we talking about things differently than each other? Am I bringing it up in a way that's kind of upsetting to you? are you frustrated with me for something different and I just don't know what it is? Really ask, because there might be something going on more than just struggling with emotional regulation.
All right. It says, what if one parent is calm and waiting for the right moment to connect with the teenager and correct his or her behavior, but spouse feels that I'm not parenting right by letting it go at the time of the discussion or inappropriate behavior? Thoughts in such situation?
Okay. Yes. Parents parent differently, and I totally understand. We all grew up with our own parenting model, right, from our parents. And so if you had a really, you know, if you had a parent that you were like, man, I really connected with my parents, I really trusted them, you would probably model a lot of their behaviors, versus if you grew up in a family where it was, I'm parent and what I say goes, you might model similarly, right? And so we really want to ask ourselves with our partners, how are we maybe parenting differently and how do we get on the same page? Because if your teenager recognizes there's rupture in your parenting, they will dive right into that. Okay. If they know one parent is safer than the other, that's the parent they will gravitate towards, or that's the parent they might open up to. But you also want to support your partner in parenting, right? We want to say we're a united front. So we first need to agree as parents, how are we going to parent? Kids are funny. But they're not always trying to be manipulative or sneaky. They're really not. They're trying to get their needs met, right? And so whether that's socially, they're trying to get their needs met with friends, maybe it's with school, maybe it's just, I know my parents are going to say no to this, so I'm not going to ask, right? Taking time to understand your kid and respond calmly will at least create that safe space where they'll trust you enough to hopefully lean in more to your boundaries than feel this urge to work against them. But when they feel like there's no wiggle room to regulate their own emotions or talk calmly and safely, they're not going to give you the opportunity, right? They're just going to make their own decisions because, again, they want to get their needs met. And so if you and your partner are noticing we're not really agreeing, I would maybe consider getting a little like help with parent coaching or therapy, couples therapy, to say, hey, how should we handle this and compromise? But you don't want your kid to see there's a rupture, because then they'll know that there's more of an issue up top and it'll trickle down.
All right. How do you handle the transition to less family activities and more independence of older teens getting ready to launch to college? Sometimes it's hard to balance wanting to provide support, but not wanting to hover or annoy a teen who wants and needs to become independent before going off to college. So how does all that you recommend change senior year for these teens and parents?
Yes, I love college time. I love seeing all my teens go to college, and some are so excited, some are nervous. I say they're always going to need family time. And so when they're younger, think of it this way. We start high and we trickle down, right? So they're going to really need a lot of family time as they're younger. And then probably as they get into teenage years, they need like 3 to 4 days of their own thing, right? Versus 5-6 days of family time. So what I would do is I would at least just make sure you have one family day, right? It doesn't have to be the whole day, right? It could be Saturday mornings, we all go have breakfast. It could be Tuesday nights is family dinner night, because they are going to want to prioritize their friends, get jobs, extracurriculars. So try and find smaller moments of your day, right? Of saying, hey, I need to go to the grocery store. Do you want to run this errand with me? Or we can just connect that way, right? It doesn't have to be necessarily such a formal plan, but just inviting your kid to do stuff with you. Don't try not to get offended when they choose their friends over you. Like I said, it's really normal, but at least have one day that they know I definitely spend with my family, and then just invite them to more things, and they may come or they may go do their own thing.
All right. The next one, it looks like she's saying you discuss what kids go through and the trouble. They don't want suggestions or listen. They don't want to lecture. They don't want to follow routine, but I want to make connections with them.
Yes. Okay. When your kiddo doesn't want to engage with you and you're like, I'm trying. And so sometimes it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes you have to say, this is what we're going to do, right? And change is uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. So kind of going back to your kiddo going to college, right? That's an uncomfortable change for them. It's an uncomfortable change for you. And so we kind of fight back to that. We have trouble letting our kid go. Our kids have trouble letting go of their norm and their current routine. And so they might be like, well, I don't want to come to family game night. Okay. Would you like to do a different activity? Like our need is that we're going to do family time, right? Like, hey, we're going to try this. We're going to try and be more intentional with the time we spend together. And they'll be like, that's dumb. Okay. Well, we're still going to do it. So do you want to come up with ideas of things we can do together? And if they say no, cool, you come up with the idea. We'll do what mom wants to do, but we're going to do it. Right. And they'll get used to it. They'll get used to it. It's just different and they might not like it and they might not love it. And like I said, you just keep the door open and they'll decide when to walk through. So they might not be super open and honest and talk about their feelings the first time you try to implement this. But we just keep talking. We can talk about our own thoughts and feelings, right? Oh yeah, I got really frustrated with this girl at work and, you know, I really wish I'd handled it differently, or I really wish I stood up for myself a little bit more, whatever. And just let them know you're humans. Because when you got the older teens, they're about to be adults, and probably to you, they're still very much babies because 18 is so young. But they're growing into their kind of adult personalities a little bit. And it's good for them to, the hierarchy to start to close and them see you as people. Like I said, not just a ride to football practice, but you're humans. You have feelings, you have thoughts. We can all talk about it. And so, so it gets to answer your question. If they don't seem super enthused, that is okay. Say, we're going to do it anyway, right? This is the boundary. This is the expectation. We're going to do it. And the hope is that they'll kind of lean into it more. And if they're really struggling and they're really not wanting to connect, use that time to ask them, hey, I want to connect with you. What's going on? You know, you don't have to tell me everything that's going on in your life, but you can kind of direct that. But, you know, is there something going on that you don't want to connect with me other than just maybe parent teen, cliche? So maybe ask.
Okay, the next one. If a teen decides to quit something, example, activity they did for years that can be so helpful in college applications, and everyone is flexible for them to continue and be supportive. They decide to quit, and in their mind, the reasoning is always right, and they don't even provide a good reason. Is it worth talking them into continuing, or just let go entirely, or maybe pointing some benefits? Also, kids communicate with other adults but don't share much with us.
Okay, so that last part, as a therapist that works primarily with teens and families, yes, your kid will tell me things that they won't tell you. But if you ever have your kid in like therapy or any kind of something similar, this is what I always request. I always request, or have them request it from, have you guys request it from the therapist. Ask to be brought in, because I always say my job as a therapist for teens is to be a safe place for them, but to also bridge the gap. So if we need to have hard conversations, we need parents in there because parents need to learn and know. And so, yeah, sometimes they might tell me about like some friend drama that's probably not the most like pertinent thing in the long run. But when it's the serious stuff, I really like to bring parents in to say, let's build the system up in support of you, and your parents get to learn you better. And it almost always helps their connection. So if you're noticing, hey, my kid is talking to other adults and not talking to me, see if you can kind of be brought in on those conversations without like overstepping into their privacy. But you know, it's a slow roll. Because look, I don't discipline the kiddos. I'm not in charge of disciplining them. I'm not in charge of parenting them. So it's easier, right? So the first part of your question, though, let me go ahead and answer. I forgot it. I'm so sorry. What was the first part, Christy?
Oh, hang on. I think I already deleted it.
It was about the child had been in an activity for a really long time.
Yes.
He wants to quit.
Thank you.
Should they force him to continue it or let it go entirely?
Okay. I always say, let's take a break, right? If they're really adamant, I'm not liking it. And we ask all the questions. Is there someone in that activity that's bothering us? Is it the teacher we don't like? Is it interfering with a different activity that you enjoy more, right? ask all those questions, try to understand why the change up. Sometimes they just get burnt out. And so I always try to recommend a break first. Like, let's say they're in vocal ensemble, right? And they're doing private lessons and they're doing area and they're doing, all these things. And they're like, it's too much. You don't like it. Probably 9 times out of 10, this is taking up a ton of time and it's not fun anymore. And so maybe we say, well, could we stay in it and scale back? Or could we just take like a few weeks off and see how you feel before just quitting? I get a lot of club volleyball players, club athletes, and it really interferes with going to birthday parties and prom and homecoming. And they're like, it's not fun. I want to be a teenager. And I want them to feel like they can also dictate how they spend their time. And so if you try all these things, you ask all these questions, they take a break and they're like, I still don't want to do it. I wouldn't make them do it unless, it's all subjective and situational, so I can't give an absolute answer. But if they're just really like, I don't care anymore, like my priorities have shifted, sometimes that happens. Okay.
Okay. How to help with teen anxiety issues. How to help an anxious teen find peers and friends of their age group when they find it difficult to do so.
Oh, yes, I know. You send your babies out to school and you just hope the world is nice to them. Modeling really good regulation, helping your kid regulate when they're anxious is huge, right? So when you're noticing they're having an anxiety attack, a panic attack, try and help them. And you might already be doing this, but take them to a calm place, help them practice some breathing exercises, go on a walk with them. A lot of times anxiety produces a ton of adrenaline and we just need to move our bodies. So maybe we just get out, right? And we just walk. Because when your nervous system and your amygdala are firing, prefrontal cortex is not online, right? So we can't have the conversation in the moment of what's making me anxious. I ask this question a lot. What's actually happening and what did I just make up, right? Because I might be nervous. Well, I don't want to go to Susie's birthday party because I don't know anyone else. And what if everyone thinks I'm weird and no one wants to be my friend? Well, I just made all that up. That hasn't happened yet. Fair concern, but that hasn't happened. And so before we can get to the questions, we want to make sure, are we regulated? And then we can start asking some of the questions and understanding why the anxiety is so high. And then really trying to put your kiddo in activities that they're really interested in. And I know there are different groups now, like outside, like community groups too, where like I've got kids in robotics, I've got kids in like, all kinds of book clubs for teens, all kinds of stuff. When they have common interests, it gives them a default topic to talk about. But sometimes it's even more helpful to start on a small scale with like 1 or 2 people versus a big group, in theater class. Maybe we're doing something more small, like community theater, where we can just get to know a few kids. And then if it's a matter of interpersonal skills and they're just kind of struggling with knowing how to interact with their peers, that's when I would maybe get someone to kind of help, maybe therapy or coach or something that would help them learn some of those skills. And that's in a situation where I think it's easier to come from a therapist than a parent, because sometimes from parents, it sounds like criticism. It doesn't sound like coaching. And that's not a fault to any parent. It's just kind of how it works. So.
Okay. I am a huge proponent of therapy. At what age do you recommend they start seeing someone?
Whenever. I've seen kids that have, not personally, but I've seen kids go to therapy at 2 or 3 if they've had, big issues like potty issues or anger issues or sharing. And they'll do more like play therapy. They're obviously too young to do talk therapy. The youngest that I've seen in therapy that I think is really kind of can appropriately sit and talk and really is like 7th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, that I really feel like they're sitting and talking and enjoying the process of therapy versus being like, why is this weirdo lady asking me so many questions? And so really there's no wrong answer. You can always put your kiddo in therapy. I've seen some 8-year-olds and they've like loved it. And we've had so much fun. But if your kid is open to therapy, even if it's just like, I have some teens, they just come to have like another safe adult to talk to. It doesn't even necessarily mean there's like one prominent issue in the moment. And, they just love it. They'll come every couple of weeks and we'll talk about life and friends and dating and, teachers and whatever's going on. And I always think if you can find a safe adult for your kiddo to talk to rather than another teenager about their mental health, it's a good place to start.
Absolutely. All right. How do I convince my kid to get more involved in sports, church without making her feel like I'm forcing it because they don't want to participate if I'm not making them go?
So, and I see this a lot it's a lot of teens, right? I kind of just rather be in my room, right? I'd rather be in my kind of like safe space. And so I think part of it's technology, maybe part of it's social anxiety. They could coincide with one another. And so I would encourage her to try, right? I would always say, I just want you to go 3 times, right? Let's go 3 times. And obviously first ask all of her concerns. Why do we not? What's going on? But if it's truly just lack of motivation, I would say, let's go 3 times. And if you still don't like it, okay, right? But let's try it. If she has a friend she could take for moral support, just kind of have that safe person with her, great. That's helpful. If you can do that. And then there's another piece. I think if you regulate technology, this goes for everybody. If you regulate screens at home, they'll probably get bored enough they'll want to go do stuff. So if it's like, well, we don't do gaming consoles in our rooms, we don't do computers in our rooms, like after school, we put our phones away so we can do homework, we do family time in the living room versus, whatever. If they can only go to their room, and like when I was growing up, it was like, maybe you could watch TV with commercials and read books. I wanted to go outside. I was bored. And so also consider that, like, have we made it just too convenient for her to be home and in her room?
This was so wonderful.
Thanks. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
you
absolutely.
are great.
Well, I appreciate all the parents. I don't think we got to the slide, but my information was on the very last slide. But if you want to just send it to parents, or it'll be when y'all upload it, it'll be in the presentation. If you want to upload the slides, maybe I think you can do a PDF of them.
Okay, yeah.
I can send you a PDF of all the slides, but I will put, if people are still on, I don't know, my email in the chat really fast. And if anybody has questions or didn't get to ask, you can email me directly. And then just let me know, or you didn't feel wanting to ask in the chat, you can always just email me and ask yourself.
Here, I can. There's that.
Yes. So there's my website. There's my email. So that if you guys want to get a hold of me, you can. I'm just right here in Allen.
Awesome. And she's amazing.
Thanks, Ashley.
All right, girl. Well, I know you have clients to get to, so thank you so much for joining us today. We're so appreciative of you, and we'll see you soon.
Yes, I'll see you next month. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Caitlin.
Bye.